Sorry, folks. I'm not sure what happened. It just dumped us out.
Well, as I've always said, technology is great except when it doesn't work. Anyway, welcome back. If you're back with us again.
No one's back yet. I've tried to stop this thing from shaking, but the table is very insecure today. So, oh, look, we've got 4 back already.
Good.
Yay, Alyssa. Good to see you.
Anyway, the story I was telling about Kareem is I was trying to get him out of his cage the other day.
Hi, Jesse.
And anyway, he nailed me through the bars. And it doesn't, obviously just a couple of Band-Aids on it, but it was deep and he held on. And that's always the ones that really, really hurt. So I'm kind of ticked at Kareem right now. He's definitely on my B list.
Hi, Iron Fire Horse.
Aren't you?
Hello again, Lisa. And later that same night, I was covering up the cages, went to swing the cover up over Gandy's cage, and I hit the metal on the light fixture and scraped off the skin across these 2 knuckles. So I've had to keep them covered for a while, too. Yeah, Hello, Heaven's Essentials.
Yeah, we were both bleeding at the same time. I'll tell you what, not a few months ago, Kareem actually went right through a vein on the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time that he's ever done that. You talk about something that bled, boy. But it healed up real good. Luckily, that still seems to work, but he literally severed a vein. And that's one of the things you got to learn to live with when you got big birds.
Yep. We always tell people, if you're going to have big birds, you have to plan to bleed.
You're going to bleed.
Oh, well.
Hello, folks. Let's see who's here.
Alyssa Burgess.
Iron
Jesse
Fire Horse.
Lopez joined us
How are you?
From Kay's live stream earlier, too.
Ah, okay. Well, hello, Jesse. And thanks for coming over from another live stream. It's always good to have crossovers. Heaven's Essentials.
Liz.
Hi.
Good to see you. I'm glad you got the message.
Thrifty VG. Hello. Thanks for coming by. And Liz, you too. Yeah, good to see everybody.
And this is Mr. Kareem.
Yeah.
Mr. Kareem is the oldest of our guys. Yeah. How are you, baby boy? Huh?
He's been a bit of a problem for me lately. I have some theories about why, but up until not too long ago, I was able to obviously spend a great deal of time with him, have him around, just hanging out. But my mobility issues here of late have been kind of that I don't get nearly as much time with him as I'd like. And Kareem does not like that. He gets angry with me.
Thanks, Liz. I think he's beautiful, too. Hello, Carrie. I'm glad you got here for the live for a change. Wonderful to see you.
Allergy. What is allergy? Cough, cough. Allergy bed. What is allergy? What is allergy?
What is
going back to my Carrie L says she's going back to her allergy bed.
She's not feeling good.
Allergies. Maybe that's what it is. Allergies. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Hi, Freaky Geek. Good to see you.
Yeah, right before we came on, Jesse, Kate mentioned, well, we've done it again. We've got more or less matching colors on. We do not get dressed together. We don't go into the closet at the same time and pick out our clothes.
No, we really don't.
It just works out like that sometimes.
It's really kind of funny the way we end up with the same color on and we don't try at all.
Alyssa, thank you. Yeah, he is a beautiful bird. He's cantankerous. Birds, at least in my world, their birthdays are always on the 1st of January, kind of like racehorses. So right now, let's see. Let me think about this for a minute now. In 2001, when I got him, I figured he was 6. Mm-hmm. So now we're sitting at 20. So
19 more, so he's
19, so 20. He's 25.
25.
So he's 25 years old now.
Mm-hmm. He's an old man.
Yeah.
He's an old man. Yeah.
But considering the lifespan on these guys, if they're well cared for, can be 80 to 100 years in captivity. It's he'll outlive both Kate and I, I'm sure. Yeah, even our pretty boy matches us. You're right.
And our other blue and gold, Bravo, is what, 4 years younger?
Well, let's see.
He's
I
about
got
19
him.
or 20, maybe.
I'll have to think about this for a minute. I got him in 2007, I think.
Okay.
And at that time, they figured he was about 5, maybe 4 or 5.
7 to 17.
So
That would make him 10, 15, and then to 19 would make him 17. So,
that sounds about right.
and Gandy, who's the one I usually have on my shoulder, who's sitting on his cage
He's
over
over
there, is 9 now. He was 2 when we got him.
I think he was a little older than 2, to be honest with you. Yeah, because he was full grown. I mean, he was still a juvenile in character, but he was.
So we say he's 10?
Yeah, that's about right. Probably 10, 17, and 25. That sounds about right.
My cat turned 5, so she's 30, 36. We have a cat and a dog as well.
It's hard to know on these birds because all of them, number one, all were rescues. And the only one that's banded is Karib. He's got a band on his leg. If you can, I don't know if you can see that or not.
It's over on that
But he was actually hatched in Arizona.
Bracelet, don't you?
We know that much. If I wanted to go dig by the ID number on the tag, I could probably find out when he was hatched. But I'm okay with calling him 25.
Good question, Freaky Geek. I don't know. Maybe they figured the average human life and the average animal's life and then divided one by the other, but who knows?
Liz Orab, do they poop all over the place or are they potty trained?
No, Liz, they're not potty trained.
Well, there's some odd things. Like we go in a car, we go like to the vet's office. Very, very seldom, because they usually ride on my shoulders as I'm driving. Very
Except
seldom
Andy rides on mine.
will they poop on my back. But as soon as we stop, I better get them out of the truck pretty quick because they're going to poop real fast.
As quick as they get
So
stopped.
they kind of seem to hold it for that. But now sitting around here at the house, Gandy is usually, when Kate's in her recliner.
To give you an idea, Gandy's nickname is Mr. Pootybet.
And
Yes.
he goes down and gets down on the end of her recliner as it's lifted out, and he'll poop off the edge.
But I have a special rug in front under the foot of my recliner and a rug behind it. So if he's on the back of the chair, or if he's on the foot of the chair, he goes on the rugs and not on the carpet.
And I've got towels behind my chair, and we just throw them in the wash. You get used to it. I mean, it's a couple of the interesting facts about bird poop, especially the big birds. Number one, it basically doesn't smell. So that's always kind of a plus. And number two, generally it's well-formed and reasonably solid, easy to pick up. Especially if it dries for a little bit, it still picks right up. We've got a really good carpet shampooer. So after a while, if it really gets kind of embedded in the carpets, just run the carpet shampooer over it. And we also have a product called Poop Off that's kind of dissolves it, or at least breaks it down.
And it works beautifully.
So if we get into a bind where we've got bird poop where we really don't want it, just spray it with a little Poop Off and then wipe it up.
But
we learn to live with it.
There's not a day that goes by that when I go in to go to bed and take off my shirt to get into my jammies, I always have poop on my shoulder. This shoulder, because this is the shoulder Gandy stands on. Always.
Or she'll come over to me while we're sitting there
320
watching
Homestead says he loves
TV
poop
or
off.
whatever, and I'll
I tell a girl,
take a Kleenex and clean the poop off her back.
thanks for coming to say Happy New Year. We're glad to see you, tell a girl.
And Freaky, hi, how are you? Yeah, birds get you in the eye. That's.
Iron Fire Horse, I don't think so. It works very well.
I don't think it
bird
works.
poop,
I don't
though.
think it works on people poop now, but it's an odd name product, Poop Off. It's been around forever.
What are you doing?
I used to buy it at the bird shows that we had over in Tallahassee, and we found a little local bird show here not too long ago, and we bought a gallon of it, so that ought to last us for a while.
A day or two, anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What you doing up there, big guy? Yeah, you're picking your feathers again.
You know, it's really funny when you have Oh, it works on dog poop and blood. Excellent. I'm glad to know that. Thank you, 320. These guys, when they make their way into your heart, you kind of overlook things just like you do with other pets. You have sometimes you have a dog or a cat that when they get excited, they piddle on the floor. Well, you just wipe it up and go on. Other animals have other things that are not necessarily wonderful, but when they're in your heart and they're part of your family and you love them, you just overlook that and find ways to deal with it.
Their screaming is probably one of the more difficult things to put up with, because when they all three get to going, it hurts your ears. It really does.
They scream so loud that in the jungle or on the mountains where they live, one scream can be heard 5 miles away. So multiply that by 3, and usually at least one of them is on your shoulders. It's no wonder I'm losing my hearing.
Years ago when I did outreach, I would go to big events. I mean, there'd be thousands of people there.
Exactly.
And I'd have, one bird on each shoulder. And every now and then they'd just decide to let go with a scream. Well, you can imagine when they're just sitting on your shoulders and they let go with one of those big screams. My ears would ring for an hour. They really would. Yep. Yeah, they are just, excuse me.
If you're a big bird lover and you go to someplace like these gatherings that he used to take the birds to, and you hear a bird, you can't not go over and check it out. It's like your feet just take over and you're there whether you want to be or not.
And an iron fire, now see that? All right, we're not going to have that.
What's he doing?
He just bit at got my glasses, but
maybe I should put him on my shoulder for
well, you can try, but if not, then he goes back in his cage. I'm not going to put up with that today.
Here, stand, sit up, get up. Good I'm
not putting up with that today.
Yeah. That's
anyway, yes, they are just like kids. Iron Fire Horse.
Here.
They have
there we go. Yeah.
Most behaviors think that birds like this, the big ones, the big macaws, they're on a par with like about a 3-year-old as far as their emotionality and their intelligence and their reactions. I mean, they hold a grudge, they get mad.
They're just like 3-year-olds.
Just like
guys.
kids.
They really are.
Just like kids.
Partly Cloudy, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say.
She was Happy New Year. And Happy New Year to everybody here, too. We may have said it before we got cut off, but I'm really hoping that 2020 is a good year for y'all. We're looking forward to quite a few things this year. Of course, mainly, I think, at least right now, the big thing that we're looking forward to is actually a few months away, but Kate is just dying to go over to Louisiana to meet up with the Broussards, a family that she's really come to know pretty well and really have some very deep feelings for. But they're really nice folks, and I know she wants to go over there real bad and spend
I call
a few
them my
days
Louisiana family.
Okay, Iron Fire Horse has a small zoo, including rescues, birds like this. Walk in, hear them, you got to go see them first. Yep, they are hilarious. Right. They are amusing. Right. They're a lot of fun to have around. They like right now. Granted, I mean, Kareem and I are having some issues, but it's not the first time. When I first got him, he belonged to a fellow that died, and in reality, the guy that died and I looked a lot alike. We both had beards, wore glasses. At that time, had long hair, and the widow had tried very hard to take care of him, but it was just more than she could handle. So I actually got him through a bird sitting job. She wanted to go out to Arizona and visit family, and I was going to take care of him for 2 weeks. And after about the first week, I'd pretty much made up my mind that I was going to do whatever I could to take Kareem in, because it was a rough start. I mean, number one, his talons were all like ice picks. I mean, they had not been trimmed at all, and they were just like needles. And every time I'd try to pick him up, he would just punch a dozen holes in my arm. Well, I tore some sleeves off a sweatshirt and got around that, and then got him to our avian vet and got his nails trimmed and stuff. But it was, and he was not easy to handle. I mean, he had some really bad habits, and I bled a lot. But right off the bat, I just realized that Kareem and I, in a lot of ways, we kind of needed each other. So anyway, I got him for, I think I paid a couple $100 for him in the cage, which was, rock bottom cheap.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Iron Fire Horse, you say they're really happy, healthy birds at the zoo. I can't agree with you, at least at our zoo. The birds are well cared for. The zookeepers care for them. They keep them in their cages. They don't really interact much. They see people walking past, looking at them, but those birds have got to be like our birds. They need interaction with a significant other, whether it's another bird that they bonded with or a human or something. They need the interaction. And
I think I'd probably get it with the zookeepers, but the one thing that I really did not like when I went to the zoo here in San Antonio is they had one big green-winged macaw, which is a gorgeous bird. And they had this cage sitting out, and I'm talking a big, permanent cage, concrete base and bricks and then a cage and everything else. But it was right out in the mainstream where everybody passed. Everybody passed.
Yeah.
So, he was constantly being messed with by everybody that walked by. They'd run their fingers down his bars and
no place to go where he could get along.
He couldn't get away from any of them. And I really felt sorry for that bird because he was just kind of, constantly on display, but he had no place where he could go and just get away from it. So I found a keeper and hollered at him.
And they had a big owl that was kept out in public too, and no place to get in dark. He was in a big open cage, and there was no cover for him at all. He was on the perches that they had, but owls like, especially during the daytime, to have a darker or at least a more covered area, and he did not have that.
I was going to volunteer to work at the zoo.
I agree, Liz.
And I got to looking around, and I said, well, the first thing I'd probably do is just start hollering at everybody about the wrong ways they were keeping their birds.
Yeah.
So I decided not to volunteer. Number one, when I go there and I see treatment like that or conditions like those, it really goes right to my heart. And I don't have a whole lot of restraint on what I'll say about what they're doing wrong. Not that I know that much, but.
By the way, is the sound quality good enough today? I was just looking at the controls, and it seems to be a little quiet. If we need to scoot the mic closer, please let us know, because it's easy to do.
But you know what, Iron Fire Horse, I'm glad that you have that zoo there, that you do have, birds that people can go see. It's the only way some people ever see critters like these. I mean, I'd love to go down to like Costa Rica and see them in the wild. But that's not going to happen. So
they do have at the San Antonio Zoo one exhibit, is what they call it, that I absolutely love to go to. Now, I always call these birds budgies, but they're not budgies.
They're caiques.
They're what?
Caiques.
Yes, caiques. They're beautiful, incredibly colorful birds. They're small birds, about the size of a parakeet or something of that nature.
Think of a cockatiel with a shorter tail.
Yeah. And they're
sweet as can be. They come up and land right on you.
They land on you.
Head,
they come
shoulders.
Up and land on your hands, on your shoulders. They've been known to have 2 or 3 of them land on my head at one time. They're wonderful, wonderful little birds. They're sweet and they're gorgeous. And this is a huge in-flight aviary. And they do have places that they can go and get away from the people, and even some slightly covered things where they can go if they just need to be away from everybody. So,
there's probably 100 birds in that little aviary there that, you walk in through some double doors so they don't come flying out.
And if you go in with something to feed them, and they sell food right outside the door, those little birds just go crazy.
You have me wondering now, although the birds seem so happy, sound is good. If you're talking about our birds, Iron Fire Horse, I'd like to think they're happy, yes. Kate
She's
and I.
talking about the ones in the.
Oh, in the zoo. Well, you never know. You know, it's.
They might be healthy and happy.
I'd like to think that the keepers there. And, you know, I watch a lot of zoo shows. We watch.
Yeah, we do.
There's one that's put out by the San Diego Zoo. Another one is at Cleveland, Ohio, I think, that has that zoo show.
Yes.
And then there's one over in England that we follow, and we watch these shows all the time. They don't very often concentrate on the birds because they're, you know, talking about elephants and giraffes and hippopotamuses.
Most of them are talking about trying to breed the endangered species.
Yeah. But every now and then they, you know, show just brief pictures of the birds. But it seems that by and large, those keepers get real bonded with the animals that they're taking care of, even though they say they don't. You know, they do. Yeah, the zoo birds, oh, they got a whole lot of flamingos down at the San Antonio Zoo.
Yes, they do.
And they've got a great layout for them. So I think they're pretty happy. For the most part, where they actually have their bird displays, it's like an aisle that you walk down, and on both sides there's large cages for the birds, and they've got, you know, cockatoos and a lot of exotic birds, and they have a good habitat. So I think they're in pretty good shape. And I'd like to think even that one that I saw that was out in that cage in the main walkway, that's not his position all the time.
Right.
They just take him out there during visiting hours or whatever, but that he's got his own place. At least that's what the keeper told me. It was like, I went and I hollered at him. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "This bird's got no place to go, can't get away, and everybody comes by and messes with him." I said, "That bird's got to be half insane." Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Liz, I hurt my hand when I was covering the birds' cages the other night. I went to swing the cover up because the cages are tall. And when I did that, I actually hit the metal on our chandelier in that room and scraped the skin off all the way across these 3 knuckles. So I've had to keep it covered because it really made a mess. So anyway, Bandana Grandma says hi to you.
Well, hi, Bandana Grandma. Good to see you. Nice of you to come by. It's
Barefoot Gardening. Hi, I'm glad to see you. Welcome.
I'll tell you what, since we've been obviously talking about birds, there's been a lot of, darn it, coffee just keeps me stuck
Hi,
up.
Kathleen. I'm glad you made it.
Excuse me. There's been a lot of encouragement of late for me to do a live stream about birds. And I've finally broken down and decided that I will. And I've still got it in the planning stages, but I'm hoping to have my first live stream. Of course, Kate will be there as well.
Right.
But this will be bird centric and hopefully a little bit of education and information. But I'm going to start it on the 14th of February, which is a Tuesday. And I'm shooting for 7:00 in the evening. Isn't that what we decided? I realize that's Valentine's Day, so we may or may not get very many attendees, but what I'm shooting for is 7 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday the 14th for my first live stream of what I'm calling the Bird Listener. So I'm hoping that some of you folks might drop by.
Jesse said he looks forward to it.
Good. I've been digging through.
Yes, Iron Fire Horse on his channel.
I've been digging through a lot of my old writings and things of that sort and trying to take out things that I thought were relevant. Because I figure my main goal is going to be kind of education and information, and then just people talking about their birds.
And Danagrama, yes, I will be there tomorrow.
And I'm also, there's a Facebook group here in Cibolo. It has about 20,000 people in it. And I'm moderately well known on that channel. So I'm putting out a broadcast there to let everybody know that I'm going to be doing my own live stream. So we'll see. If it works, it works. If it don't, it don't. But I think my first program, I think, is going to be on how to lay out cages.
You also need to tell them the name of your channel.
The Bird Listener. Well, actually, it's supposed to be called the Bird Listener, but when I go to YouTube and try to go to that channel, I've got three, and they get tangled up for some reason. So I'm still in the process of clarifying how it's going to work. But I figure between now and then we'll have another broadcast here. By next Sunday, I should have everything set up, and I'll be able to put out definitive word about where it is and how to get there and all that sort of stuff. But the channel that I call the Bird Listener, when I go and look for it, it just comes up as my first channel, which was just David Howell. But that's where all my old videos are about the birds from even way back in Tallahassee. So if you go to YouTube and you look up and put it in quotation marks, The Bird Listener, it should come up pretty quick. And like I said, there I've got my old videos and some of the new stuff that I've done since I've been here. But anyway, so that's my plug for my program. I'm done now. I'll go away now.
Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, also please subscribe and hit the bell so you can hear when we do videos or live streams.
Hardneck Farms. Hi there. Don't recall that name. Welcome.
I
Thanks
will
for
be
coming.
doing videos again starting this coming week. I took a little time off, and I had hoped to do some cooking for Christmas, but that didn't turn out. So we will start again. It is the Bird Listener, listening listener.
Yep. I've got, well, if you think about it, from the time I've just really started, even with the little birds, I've got about 30 years of bird experience under my belt. So,
Hardneck Farms, I hope you feel better soon.
yeah, no
Been
kidding.
sick. I went through that. I was supposed to moderate a live stream last Thursday, and I could not make it. I felt so bad. So I understand. I hope you get better soon.
What? Are they inside the cage?
Yeah, Hardneck, I understand about that because I always hit the bell and I rarely get notifications. And Kareem is inside, Bravo's outside.
Barefoot gardening, my cough is my COPD, but in the mornings, or at least when I have my coffee, it's got quite a bit of creamer in it, and it always seems to just kind of block my throat quite a bit. So I do apologize for my coughing. It's either that or my voice sounds really, really, really bad.
Oh my goodness, Hardneck Farms
Well,
has been sick since before Thanksgiving.
What?
Hardneck Farms has been sick since before Thanksgiving.
Oh, my
and her
gosh.
name is Wendy. Wendy, I'm sorry
Wendy.
you're still not feeling well. That is awful.
What, just generic feeling bad or something specific? But Freaky Geek, actually, I knew the man who was the bird listener, or the bird whisperer. I could tell you stories about that guy that would just, he was from California, and he was the original bird whisperer. And when I ran the bird club over in Tallahassee, he came down to see us twice and had programs about behaviors. And this man could handle any bird. I mean, he was an amazing man. He passed away some years ago, but I learned a great deal from him. We were in touch. We became friends, and I was in touch with him quite a bit. And one of the things that I remember most vividly that he taught me was lower the energy when you're working with birds. When they get excited or hyper or excited, just being difficult, his first rule was to lower the energy. And that has held me in good stead for years. Even with people, you get into things going on with people. When tempers start to go up, the first thing I think of is lower the energy.
Oh, she has asthma. My
Ooh.
youngest daughter, Hardneck, Wendy, my youngest daughter had asthma when she was a tiny infant, and it was always brought on by cold fronts coming in. And the only thing I could do for her when she would have an asthma attack was I would go into the bathroom and turn on the hot water and just fill the room with steam and hold her in there for a little while, and then take her outside, and the cold from the incoming cold front coupled with the steam sometimes would shake her to the point where it would open her lungs again. But
Wendy, does Benadryl
asthma's
or anything
terrible.
like that help? Any antihistamines help with your asthma? is I don't know that would really work for that, but it does help to dry things out.
For those who are asking about creamer, I was trying to answer it. It is an additive that you can put in tea or coffee, usually used in coffee. It generally has a flavor. And
well, looky there, Wheat Tree Bonds, I went and found my channel.
And anyway, it generally has a flavor, and
it makes it worse.
Sometimes has dairy and sometimes doesn't. But it is hard on the throat. It tends to build up and coat the throat. People with COD tend to have a little trouble with that.
Iron Fire Horse, we are on the same page about birds being smarter than we think. I've written a number of articles about that birds are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Except they're like 3-year-olds.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, sometimes they're a lot smarter than you might think.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, G. Murphy was moderating elsewhere.
Hello, Gilbert.
Had to fight trolls that hate Israel and the Jewish people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we had some really, really bad trolls on Liz's channel and on another channel I do this morning. So we have a whole new class of trolls that have come out. They seem to hit things in threes, and it can be a bit of a problem to get them under control.
Well, especially right now, things are in such a terrible state internationally. I don't even want to go there.
Wendy, Hardneck Farms, you're right. Lots of people can't do dairy. I have to be real careful with my dairy. It messes with my gut issues, so I stay away from most dairy. I can't give up my butter. I have to use real butter, and I still have not been able to give up all cheese, but I've gone to only a couple of different cheeses, so that seems to be helping. Did I see Laura from Green Raven come in? Oh, there you are. Hi, Laura. It's good to see you. Yes, crows are very, very smart. Aren't crows the ones that use tools?
Crows and ravens. Ravens, yes. more specifically, they're seemingly smarter than crows. But ravens have actually been, observed using tools, and pretty sophisticated tools when you get right down to it. There again, some of the programs that we watch, some of the behavioral studies that have been done on crows and ravens indicate that they're a whole lot more clever and a lot smarter than we think they are.
Surprise, Gilbert? Post something. And yes, I agree, Wheat Tree. We do have zero tolerance on all the channels I moderate for. I just will not allow them. Sometimes they're a little faster than I am, but it's getting better.
Well, I like
thanks to your training.
I like the names that Kate has for some of the functions that moderators do. And what's the one, the troll killer? Is that right?
I'm sorry?
Isn't it the troll killer?
Troll slayer.
Troll slayer, that's the one. That's even better. I like that one. That's a cool phrase. I am the troll slayer.
I guess you're right, Freaky. Indirectly, they are from plant-based, but not necessarily. Oh, look. I made Gilbert a moderator. Even starlings.
Yeah, starlings are fascinating. We've got 3 birds' nests out front on the porch that have been there for years. And the ones that come by there are the little
barn swallows.
The little barn swallows. And one nest out there has gone through about 7 or 8 generations now of residents. And each year they build this nest up a little bit higher. I call it the Waldorf, but it sits on one of our outside lights that I've unscrewed the bulb on. But that thing, I swear to God, the thing is this tall.
And the little birds are only about that tall. So.
Yeah, and it's one layer after another. I keep telling Kate, I need to knock it down. I just can't do it. It's a work of art. It really is. I'd like to, and I guess I could do it if I tried, but I'd like to get it down intact and mount it on a board with some sort of fixative and keep it. But, I haven't taken the time to do it, but I want to save it because it's really
amazing. It's amazing.
It's become a heritage piece around here. It's been here almost as long as we've lived here.
And what's really amazing about it is when you look at it, you can literally see the different levels that each family has added to it. It is fascinating.
Then a couple of years ago, I put on some of the other spots out there, I actually put a small piece of plywood stuck inside into so that it makes a platform. And out there right now on that one,
Yeah,
there's about 4 or 5 layers on that one.
at least it's
That
gotten
one right
so
out
yeah,
there.
it's gotten so tall now that it's hard to get in there.
Yeah, there's very little headspace now because they keep building it up every year. Well, we get two visits
See you
a
in a minute,
year.
Freaky.
It seems like there's a springtime visit, and then whenever they get that bunch fledged and they leave, then another group shows up. I'll tell you a little interesting fact about these barn swallows is they travel back and forth between here and Mexico, and they come back to the same sites to nest year after year. They know exactly where to go, and some of these that have come here may very well have been born here and now are coming back, multiple generations later to raise their own families. So they're interesting birds.
Liz says they don't feed the wild birds there because Mr. J says it's like pimping for the cat.
That's
That's true,
that's very
unfortunately.
true.
But it is funny to say too.
We have one cat, and every now and then he gets a bird, but
Oh,
what can I
thank
say?
you.
What?
Barefoot Gardening likes the big mug I use.
Oh, okay.
This thing has 900 milliliters.
No, it's just about a liter. Yeah,
Yeah,
almost a
that's what it
quart.
is. Almost a quart. And I go through usually 3 of them a day. Right now I'm drinking homemade lemonade. I also drink coffee and tea out of them. So
Years ago, one of my doctors told me that I was drinking too much coffee. I said, okay, I'll cut down to 1 cup a day. And I got one of those. So I had a coffee maker that would make 10 cups. And every morning I'd put 10 cups in there, and that's what I'd take to work. And that was my coffee for the day. Okay, let's see. G. Murphy moderates for Lynn Lee's ministry as well. Yeah, I imagine she would get attacked a lot. Anybody who's out there doing any kind of ministerial work.
we have the barn swallows on the front porch. I have a huge multi-level birdhouse on a tall wooden pole out in the front yard. And that thing, it's double-sided and 2 stories, and there's probably 7 or 8 bird nest holes on each level. And that thing is always full.
Yep.
Always birds. I have to take it down, clean it out, run it back up the pole, and it gets full again. And sometimes it's hard to find a time when there are not birds in there so I can clean it out. Let's see. Been meaning to ask, how is your stock garden in this season? Jesse, I've not even started doing much of anything with my garden yet this season. I hope to get out there and do some soil improvements the way that Food Forest Permaculture says, where you dig a trench down the middle of your bed, and then you, instead of dumping things in a compost pile, you put it in the trench, and after a little while you cover that over and go to the next one. That's what I want to do so that I can build the soil and have healthier plants. I also have a huge compost pile, and I've got all the seeds, I just haven't put it in yet. If I started talking about herbicides and pesticides and my experience on them, I would get tons and tons of trouble. McCoy's, our neighbor next door
very opposed to them.
Used to use Roundup all the time, and I finally talked him out of it. So
I'm very opposed to them because of the damage that they do to the wildlife.
Yeah, and we've got bees in the backyard now, so I don't want that stuff around
We
at all.
don't use it at all. G. Murphy, 51-year-old Gulf War veteran, a man. Well, I'm retired Air Force, so Murphy, thanks for your service.
We treat a great grandma.
In wartime too. So me, I'm an old Vietnam era vet, so I've heard of people inheriting flocks of swallows. Flocks of
Swallows.
barn swallows. Well, I guess if we moved out and somebody moved in here, if they didn't tear down the nest, they probably would get them. So
Jesse, you're talking about my green stock, right? If that's it, I still
That's going
have
pretty
all
well.
kinds of herbs growing my green stock that I planted last year, so I'm hoping that they'll continue to grow. Kathy Zimmerman, do you think critters like skunks, squirrels, groundhogs, and bunnies would dig in your garden for the compost goodies? Actually,
You
they
moved
don't
right
go
there?
in the compost pile, so I can't imagine why they would do that. And we've got lots of wild land around us, so if somebody was going to, they would do it.
Mr. Murray. Oh, that's right. Okay, now ring a bell and I'm there. I'm really bad with names sometimes, but yeah, I remember now. We talked about Torrejon. We were in Spain. Yep.
You're welcome there for whatever.
Nobody home sometimes. That's all there is to it. Yeah, I really liked Torrejon. That was a good place to be. That was, of all the assignments that I had in the Air Force, I would say that my two assignments in Spain, one down in Seville and the other up in Madrid, were my favorite assignments of my entire career. Yep, no doubt. Yes, it did go ding ding. Yep.
Right.
G. Murphy's first name is what? Was it
Gilbert.
Gilbert, that's right. Okay. You need to write that list for me of who's who.
Well, I'm starting to make one.
But yeah, Gilbert, sometimes it takes a while for things to get through. I've got a rather thick head, and like I said, I'm real bad with names sometimes. McCoy says never had issues with plant material in the compost. Anything else would bring in unwanted critters.
I
Yeah.
put kitchen scraps in there. The only thing I don't put in my compost pile is bones. I don't put bones in there. And I give my meat scraps to the dog. So I don't do that either. But most all kitchen scraps, if they don't go into making bone broth, they go into making compost.
Wheat tree, as far as Mucinex, no, but I take another medication that's supposed to help with the phlegm and all that stuff. Sometimes it does. But often, I mean, I'm not doing myself any favor by drinking this, because it's all it does is just end up creating more congestion for me.
Thanks, Kathleen. I've been trying, I make his coffee for him, and I've been trying to cut down and use less and less. But I can only go so far before he wants some creamer again. So
Yeah.
I can't take it completely away. Oh, Liz says she used to go to Spain every school holiday as her grandfather lived there.
Cool. What part of Spain, Liz, if you don't mind my asking?
And you know, Liz is in Wales.
Yeah, but I've traveled a lot of Spain, so chances are fairly good I might have been around that area somewhere. I loved it. I really did. It was just, of course, now you have to bear in mind that when I was a kid, I lived down in Laredo, Texas. And when I was there, I
Hi,
learned
Anna Lynn.
all my playmates were Mexicans, and I learned how to speak Tex-Mex pretty much like a native. I mean, I was there from the time I was 3 until I was 10. And just about all my playmates were Mexicans. So I spoke Spanish by the time I was 10 years old. Well, then later on, when I went to Seville, Spain, down there they speak what's called Sevillano, which is almost like, if you think about, the United States, we got,
Hi, Southern Blessed.
people up in the East have a certain accent and vocabulary. Deep South, something else. Midwest, something else. And that's the way it is in Spain. And then, so I learned to speak Sevillano. And then later on, when I went to Madrid, that's literally kind of like what we would call the Queen's English. The official Madrileño Spanish is spoken up there. So I learned to speak that. That's the real proper Spanish. Beautiful, beautiful language, beautiful language.
In the south of Spain,
I
near
love it.
Marabella.
Marabella, I know where
Shopping
that
at
is.
Gibraltar.
Yeah. I saw Gibraltar. I never went over there, but I saw it from the Spain side.
Hello,
But,
Southern Blessed. It's good to see you today.
And I know where Marbella is.
Happy New Year.
32 different dialects in Spain. I wouldn't be surprised. That's you go out even to Mallorca and they speak Mallorquin, and you go up north and they got they speak a different one up around Barcelona.
And we try Tex-Mex adding to that, and it really gets confusing.
And then Castilian Spanish around the central part of Spain. So yeah, but I'd never counted them up. I didn't know but that sounds about right. 32 different dialects. It's
When do you bury your scraps, or do you just dump them on top of the ground and let them go down?
We treat you right. High Spanish and low Spanish. That's about right. That's the way they put it. And they look down on you too if you don't speak the right Spanish. Ooh, that's. I guess maybe it's like speaking Cockney if you're, speaking the Queen's English. And feed the critters. Why not? I mean, if you put scraps in your raised beds, maybe they'll eat that instead of your plants.
Hi, Lori. Good to see you.
So
when I was taught Spanish in high school, we learned what our teacher called Castilian Spanish.
That's the Madrid, or the proper
and
Spanish.
Then living in South Texas, I would leave the classroom and go into everywhere else, and they spoke Tex-Mex, and I had a terrible time because I couldn't figure out what they were saying. It didn't sound that much like the.
I went to Seville because I did speak Spanish, but it was Tex-Mex. Well, Sevillano is very distinct dialect. So it took me a while. Luckily, I have a fairly good ear for languages, so it didn't take me long to pick it up, but I got looked at funny a lot.
Wendy, I have a big pile that used to be wood chips about 4 years ago when it was delivered, and now it's just a big pile of dirt. And I'm going to be hauling that around and putting it in my raised beds as well.
We made a good deal on that. Kate called up a couple of places that, did grinding up of limbs and stuff like that. And, they have to pay to go dump that stuff. So Kate said, well, I'll tell you what, if you want to come over here, you can dump it for nothing. So they brought, and I mean big dump trucks. And they made about 3 or 4 trips over here, and we had just tons of ready-made compost material. It's right there.
Liz says you should listen to Welsh. Oh, yeah. It's a beautiful language.
I've heard Welsh. It rolls off the tongue beautifully, but I don't understand a word of it. Not a word.
I'm so glad you came, Southern Blessed, and you enjoy your live stream as well. Kathleen, I have an enclosed bin, but I quit using it because it was too small. I have a 4x4 compost pile. I used what they call T-posts, which are a T-shaped post you pound into the ground. And then I wired pallets to that. And I just keep dumping on top of it. So, hello, Mary Cleveland. It's good to see you. You got wood chips, letting them decompose. That's what I did. Mine decomposed for 3 years before we started using them.
Yeah, and grass has grown up through a lot of it, but oh well.
Oh yeah, but
what can you do?
Then we had some friends come over and they brought a front loader and they scooped all those 4 or 5 piles of decomposing wood chips into one big pile, and all the grasses have now died. So all I have to do is pull that out and take it over and put it in the garden. It ought to be great.
Make biogas.
And
okay.
Raccoons and badgers moved in, so careful about leaving out food. That's McCoy's. And Liz says kitchen scraps go into compostable bags and are collected by the local authority. They use it to make biogas. Good idea. We barely have a recycling program at all where we live.
I don't think there is any really.
We're out in the country, and we do have one, but you have to ask for it. It's not just an automatic thing.
Well, attracting a skunk while you're drying out beef hides, that would not be a good plan. That's not a good idea. Yep. Bermuda grass is a pain. That really is.
Well, sometimes I think I have the Bermuda Triangle in my yard when I start doing things, looking for things.
Awful. I mean, you start trying to pull that up and it just going, you got some strands of that.
So I see.
If we have to do that, we'll do.
Gilbert out year had to go up with a friend for a legal matter, and it's beautiful country. It's just lovely.
Well, I wonder if we ought to go ahead and set her up again because we're getting a lot of buffering.
Okay, guys, we're going to shut this one down, open another one, watch for the notice, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Should be back in just a couple of minutes. Sorry about this.